Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. I don't know about you all, but I'm looking forward to the end of 2021 and for it to be done. So today we're going to talk about some of the end of year stuff, but that'll be towards the end of the webcast. And we'll start talking about open enrollment file that is scheduled to come by tomorrow. Actually, we may have it before the end of today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hop in here to our presentation. An email was sent out earlier today with a webcast reminder. It included the PowerPoint slides as well as the guide that I will be referencing in this presentation. During the webcast, if you had any questions, in the upper right-hand corner of the Teams event screen, you'll have a little Q&A box that you can select. It's a little chat bubble, with question marks. So if you had any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them at any time, and both myself and Kim York on my team will be sitting in and monitoring that chat. So I mentioned too about the question marks. That's a little older version of Teams on there. I believe it's actually bubbles now. But after the webcast, should you have any questions, please send them to munis@education.ky.gov. That is the team box that both Kim and myself monitor, and will be more quickly able to assist you. After the webcast, there's no need to wait. The webcast is automatically archived, and you can select the link from the email that was sent out, and it will start playing for you. Actually, if you join the webcast late, it'll start at the beginning, and you can pause it, continue watching, and it's a pretty nice feature with Teams live events. So a little bit about the KD Munis team. You're probably familiar with all of us, but my name's Kristen Lambert. I'm a technical analyst on the team, also do some of the team lead roles. I work with Kim York, who I'm so happy to have on my team and helps with a lot of districts, and is and has her own set of skills with certain programs, or I handle some other ones. We both, though, do a lot of stuff with the CRIS program, and we'll be happy to help you if you have any questions. Just send them to the munis@education.ky.gov box during the open enrollment process, and we'll be happy to help. Then we work alongside Chris DeRoche, who is our Tyler Tech vendors partner. So let's hop on to some more information. We're going to talk about 2022 open enrollment processing. I mentioned the file is expected to be delivered by tomorrow. The CRIS system is running it now. It's a pretty intensive process running the open enrollment file for all the districts. It takes all day for it to process. There is an end of year payroll guide that I referenced that was attached to the email. You'll want to follow the steps in the guide, and it's there for a reason. You don't really want to jump around, because doing certain things out of order could cause problems with importing the files and the employee deductions. So the first thing you'll want to do before importing your open enrollment file is verify what records you have sitting in the pending area. If you have a bunch of old records sitting there, I've assisted districts before and hopped in and looked, and there would be records there from a year or older that we're still sitting in the pending area. Those obviously at this point are no longer any good. They make no point in keeping them. You'll want to review any of those old records and purge them, delete them. If you have records that need to be processed, go ahead and process those records before importing the 2022 file. Any remaining ones, like I mentioned, can go ahead and be purged. The only exception to that is possibly if you have new employees whose insurance is effective as January 1st, 2022 or later. Now, my understanding is I don't believe CRIS has been sending any new hire records that take effect January 1st or later. So you may not have any records sitting in pending, but should you have a new employee that has a record sitting in the pending area, I would suggest hanging on to that and not purging it. Wait to see if that new employee is included on the open enrollment file. If the employee is included on the open enrollment file, go ahead and purge that previously received record, because you'll have the most up-to-date on the open enrollment file. Of course, if the employee was not received, which I've never heard of that happening, but for some reason, if the employee was not on the open enrollment file, you then have that existing record that can be used. So I talked about purging records, purging the old records. This is normal MUNIS processing in the Kentucky Employee Benefit Program, so it should be nothing new. But in the import pending from the main screen, you'll select that. You can select import later to view the pending records. From the ribbon, you'll select update, and you can select all or individually mark those records and select the purge button and yes when prompted to delete those records from the pending area for all those old records that are no longer needed. Mention that we anticipate the open enrollment file anytime now. Once it's available, we will send out an email notifying everyone, and this file can be imported into the pending area before any of your December payrolls have been completed. So it's okay to actually import the open enrollment file because it's sitting in the pending section of the Kentucky Employee Benefits Program. One way to know that it's the open enrollment file, of course, is the date that it was sent, because we'll notify you that's available, but also you'll notice it'll look a little different than your existing files. The file size that you see on the screen will be vastly larger than your normal daily file. So you'll see that on your screen and you'll go ahead and import it. And this is the same process you'd use every day. You'd import the open enrollment file, possibly the export filter would pop up and you would select yes and accept, and that would dump the file out into Excel, and you'd open it up on your computer and have all the information that's listed on the open enrollment report. One thing I did want to note is all files, daily files, should be imported in the order they're received. So do not import files received after the open enrollment file until the open enrollment file has been imported. The CRIS system sends out records in order, and MUNIS system will sequence those records. So if John Smith was on the open enrollment file, and 5 days later, CRIS, he had a qualifying event and changed insurance, and John Smith had a new record. If you imported that record that was 5 days after the open enrollment file, if you imported that first, you're already out of order, and that's going to cause negative impact on the employee deductions. And this is the same case year round. You'll always want to import those files in order received, because the way the CRIS system spits them out and the way the MUNIS will sequence the records and make the newest record the top record for that employee. Let's see here. And also, you know, once you go ahead and import it into pending, you can kind of start working on the open enrollment record. You can do everything except setting the start date and moving the records to active and updating deductions. So it's okay to go ahead and import into pending, but you cannot do those other steps until all the December 2021 payrolls have been completed. The effective dates on records, all your health medical records will all have an effective date of January 1st, 2022, but your life insurance records will have a different date. And usually that's based on the date the employee initially enrolled in the insurance. So you will not see a 1/1/2022 date on those life insurance records unless the employee enrolls in it for the first time in January. The third step would be to complete all your 2021 payrolls. That's pretty straightforward. Once all your 2021 payrolls have been completed, you can go about finishing the rest of the open enrollment process. I like to say start with the clean slate. MUNIS offers a very easy way to find and delete deductions in the employee deduction program. So before you do anything else, why don't you go ahead and delete those deductions. Do everything from the state sponsored plans. I know some of you have other Section 125 administrators that offer different, like dental or vision plans. This just pertains to the plans offered by the state included in the open enrollment file. So in the employee deductions program, you would select the global button and then select delete, big red X, and a screen will pop up. And at that point, you can choose your deduction from a drop-down box and accept and Select yes when you're ready to delete the deductions. It's really easy, quick process. So once you're done, the employees would not have any of those deductions from 2021 remaining. So we'll get rid of all those before proceeding to the next step. At that point, you're ready to work more on your open enrollment file. This has always caused some confusion in years past as far as setting the deduction start date. Once you've done everything, you'll be in your pending area and you need to set your deduction start date. We usually use an example of a pay period that starts on December 15th, ends on December 31st, but the first check date is in January. This is the first date that the employee should have deductions taken for health insurance for 2022. I would probably use a deduction start date of 12/14/2021, which is 1 day before the pay period start date. But as long as the date is before or within the pay period, deduction should be deducted from the payroll. Now, you'll want to use this reasoning throughout the year. So in March, when you're setting a deduction start date, I would not be using a January start date. I'd probably be using a March or February 28th deduction start date. Go on down the road, September, you're doing this. I would not be using a December 15th start date. I would be using a September or August start date. Think of it just like if you're manually entering a deduction for employee. What would the start date be for that deduction? So that would be setting your deduction start date would be determined. In the pending area, when you set this deduction start date and move the 2020 records to active, all your records are sitting in your pending area. If all you have is open enrollment file, you don't need to do anything else. We'll skip to the next step. But if you have a bunch of other records, say you've imported the open enrollment file and you've imported other files since the open enrollment file, and now you're starting to work on moving the open enrollment file to active, I would suggest doing this where you search for just that open enrollment file. You would know what the file name is by, you can see it on the records. It's listed on every record. You can put the file name in that import file field after selecting search, and then mark all the records and move those to active. So it will select only those records that are in the open enrollment file, and it filters all those other import records out. So again, if all you've done is done the open enrollment file, there's no need to do that. Or you don't need to do this step. You can just manually deselect non-open enrollment records in the pending area before moving into active. So after you selected the records in the pending area, like I mentioned, you set the start date that you've determined and then move to active. So that's going to take all these records from the pending area and move them to the active record set. One important thing to note is records must be moved to the active the entire year. These records are used for the federal reimbursement process and are vital to that process. If you're not moving these records, not just open enrollment, but throughout the year, if you're not moving those, it will have a negative impact to your federal reimbursement process because the amounts will not be correct. Federal reimbursement process uses the amounts on the health records to calculate federal reimbursement. Post-tax health deductions. I don't believe this applies to anyone in Kentucky, but we have to throw it out there. You would know if you had any employees that had a post-tax health deduction. If that was the case, just refer to the Kentucky Employee Benefits Guide for more processing information. Step 7, process the update deductions. So you've moved all your records to active. You'll not want to process this until after all the other steps have been completed. From the Kentucky Employee Benefits menu, you'll select Benefit Records, and that gets you to the active set. Then you'll select Current Find. Current Find will return all records for employees, but it will return their most current records. So while are going to return everyone that is in the open enrollment file, you may also see some people that are no longer there, and that's expected, and that's fine because their records will have been posted, or if it was unposted for some reason, the deduction start date on those records would be from previous years. So you select current find will return the highest sequenced, most current record for all employees, and then you'd select update DEDS for update deductions. At this point, you'd enter a minimum deduction start date, and this corresponds to the deduction start date that you put for all those employees. I'm going to use 12/14/2021 as an example. Entering that deduction start date in would filter out any record from prior to that date, so any of those unposted old records would not post during the process. Same reasoning can be used throughout the year. When you import records, I use that March and September example. If you had a March effective date on a health record and you chose a March 1st March 1st deduction start date, the minimum deduction start date I would probably enter in here would also be March 1st, because that would keep any old unprocessed records from possibly posting for that employee or other employees. So no difference. This is the same process throughout the year. The only difference is we have a lot more records you have to work with during open enrollment. So after you select update deductions, you'll choose the delete employee deduction option. Another thing to note is make sure your employee deductions program is closed before proceeding. So if you happen to have that open, go ahead and make sure that's closed. And then you can say yes and output post the deduction process. Should you have a posting error, and I don't plan on any posting errors this year, we've had some fixes that have happened to keep some of those pesky problems that have happened in years past from occurring, but should you have a problem, please take a screenshot of it so we can help you with that. Usually what we've happened in the past is if there was an error, there would be information on that that would be provided to you on the screen that we knew what record was causing the problem. So if you have an issue, take it, if you're not good with using the snipping tools that are provided, you can always use your cell phone and grab a snipping of it, take a shot of your screen to tell us what's going on. But I'm going to knock on wood here, I don't foresee any of those problems this year. And also just another reminder, the update deduction process needs to be done, not just now, but throughout the year. Not only does it update the employee amount, it also updates the employer amount. And that portion is reflected on the employee's W-2. So really should be done through the Kentucky Employee Benefits Program. If for some reason you ever had to manually do an employee deduction, you always need to make sure that employer portion is posted as well. And it's also important that you make sure everything posted for both the employee and the employer. So some just miscellaneous import file info. Continue importing the files you received after the open enrollment file. As I mentioned, you want to import those in order. Files received, though, after the open enrollment file may contain both 2021 and 2022 records. So if you had any 2021 records after importing the 2022 open enrollment file, you'll probably need to address those manually, because if you go through the process of importing that fully into the Kentucky Employee Benefits Program and updating deductions, the 2021 record may take precedence over the 2022 record, and the employee may not have the correct 2022 deduction amount. So if you receive 2021 records after, just be on the lookout for those, and you may need to process that part manually. Many of you are probably aware of this, the FSA amounts after open enrollment, they send you the annual amount on the file. We don't know how many payrolls you have left for the year. Chris doesn't, Munis can't be quite sure how many you processed, and also based on the effective date of when the employee's deduction is supposed to start. So all you have to do on that FSA record is select update and change your total flexible spending cycles, and it'll automatically calculate the amount to take each paycheck. And then of course you can move that to to active, and it'll post the correct amount for you. So we've talked about the open enrollment file. We have some stuff to talk about with the miscellaneous, just end of year general processing information I always share. The KDE and works with Tyler to distribute both the Kentucky and federal annual tax tables each year. I would like to use the word value-added service. This is a value-added service that is provided at you for no cost. If you were to have Tyler do this, it would cost easily $1,000 for the service. So this is something we work towards, and we'll get those posted as soon as they're available, and we can work with the Tyler folks to get them distributed. Until that time, though, your 2021 tax tables will continue to work, and there's no big changes, so it won't impact your employees' taxes early on in the year. Also, the year-end updates, those have already been pushed out, but I'm sure Tyler will have a few more available. I will say for those of you on version 2019, Tyler Deploy is a much more stable and robust product than the MIU. You should have been set for updates to automatically install every Sunday night for those on 2019. Those in version 11.3, if you have stuff set to automatically update, you may want to just double check that that stuff is still installing. And just a little word of caution, but most likely most of you are up to date on 11.3 as well. Also, beginning of the year, you'll need to make sure your Social Security deductions have been updated in the Deduction and Benefit Master. The amount has been increased to $9,114, so make sure your employee and employer limited are updated, those fields. Also coming in 2022 are some changes to TRS. You probably sat in on a TRS session at some point. Maybe some information has been conveyed to you about the rate for employees that became part of the TRS system on or after 7/1/2008. Those federal employer rate is actually going to increase. So for those folks, you need to make sure that deduction is updated prior to creating and running your first 2022 payroll. Also, for those new folks that are going to be first joining the system in 2022, they're going to require 3 new deductions, and we're going to have more information on a separate webcast. Information has been sent out about that. It'll be, believe it's next Wednesday in the morning. So there will be a whole separate webcast on those changes. Deadline for ACA reporting. So, of course, I sent this presentation out in the guide, and I've been looking every few days for information on extensions, and lo and behold, I looked right after lunch today and I found something that was posted within the last day. So when I created this slide, at that point, there was no extension had been announced. It appears that there's a new proposal the IRS has put out to create an automatic 30-day extension for giving those 1095 forms to your employees, and the extension has been taken to March 2nd. And sounds like this is going to be something that's permanent. And I don't want to say, yes, this is the case for sure, but if you Google it, it seems to have just come out, and that's thankfully very good news, because I know those forms are a pain to do. So give you guys more time. Once I have more information, I'll forward that information out to you. Filing to the IRS, though, has not changed. Paper forms are due February 28th, and electronic filing is due on March 31st. So we'll have the 1095 information, those ACA dependent and employer files, employee files, which should be split and distributed by January 7th. An email will be sent out once the files have been distributed, along with probably the information about the reporting deadlines. But, do what I did. I just Googled, 1095 reporting deadline 2022 and found information from the IRS. Also, time to plug our new KDE Munis SharePoint site. The old one has been retired. It had too many issues, access issues for people. This one should not cause any issues for you to get to. We've included some links and information. It's also included on this slide. Everyone should have access, whether you're a Microsoft district or a Google district. You just use your email address and password and it'll get you in. Anything that we've sent out will be on the news section. I'm putting postings there. There's also the 2019 upgrade calendars included. And there's also a repository of some documents. Things that we don't necessarily want out on the public KDE website. There's things related to Tyler end of year documents. I saved those off for you guys so you don't have to go searching on Tyler for that information. Also, there's stuff related to upgrade, things like that, and just any other miscellaneous documents. If anybody has cube templates they like to put up in that library, I'd be happy to add that to it. Just let me know and send me an email. So check out the new KDE SharePoint site when you have a chance. And that is pretty much it on our presentation. If you have any questions after the presentation, send it via email. If you could, please, not to an individual person. And the email's listed below, along with our KDE SharePoint site, the address. You can copy and paste that into your browser. And it looks like we have a question or two over here. Kim has been answering it. Let's see, Kim, do you have any questions that we can share with the group?
Looks like we have one question. Is the process to update the cycles on the record before moving the FSA record to active in the Deduction Master or Benefit Records program? If I'm understanding that right, I think that would be where you would just go into the benefit record, make that update of FSA, and then you would update deduction so that it would fall over into the deductions, the employee deductions program properly.
Exactly. I'm not sure if you can do that in the pending area. I should know that, but I know you can do it no matter what before you update deductions. So whether it's in pending or in the benefit records itself, you can just select update and change those cycles and do your update deduction process.
And that's let me see, we've got one. I think that's the only question that we have currently.
Well, this presentation actually took about 10 minutes more, or 10 minutes less than I thought it would. A lot of you folks should be old hands at some of this. I know there's a lot of new folks out there. Don't stress. Again, this open enrollment file is a big deal. I'm giving you that, but it should be the same process of your daily imports. It's just a lot more employees. We have that Munis box you can send an email to with questions. And I believe that's all I'm going to say. So that's it on our presentation. I'll hang out here for a few more moments if anybody wants to share any more questions. And thanks you all for attending and have a great day. Oh, here's a question. So we have an update. So we have to update each individual person that has an FSA. No, let me go back to that. That pertains to after open enrollment, and that has always been the case. So there's a settings in the Kentucky Employee Benefits Program that you say how many cycles that you have, and when the file comes in, it takes those cycles and divides it by the annual amount and says, this is what the per check amount is. So for open enrollment, that works perfectly, right? Because everybody's starting fresh. But say you have a new hire that starts, in March. I keep using March because it's my birthday. It's a good month. So say you have an employee that starts in March and they only have, 20 cycles remaining. You would update that to 20 and it would do the dollar amount per paycheck. The system doesn't know how many cycles you have remaining for the year at your district. So you need to tell it how many cycles and it will calculate it. And that again applies after the open enrollment file, not to the open enrollment file. And that's always been the case. We've never presented that on our presentations, and I wanted to make sure people were aware of that. I've heard a comment or two saying it doesn't do it because, well, it's never actually done it. It's always after open enrollment, you've had to make that change. And thanks for the nice comments, Jane. And okay, I think we're all good. Again, I'm hanging out. If anybody has any more questions, we're just here to answer them. Okay, Kim, why don't we go ahead and end this? It looks like we don't have anything else.
Okay, hope everyone has happy holidays. Bye-bye.